Hi, it's Dr. Mercola. And with this epidemic, I thought many of you would be interested in learning more about the World Health Organization that declared this to be a pandemic. Wouldn't it be intriguing to find some interesting connections here? Well, let's jump into it. So the World Health Organization is actually a specialized agency within the United Nations, and it was established in 1948 to ostensibly further international cooperation for improved public health conditions. It was given a broad mandate under its constitution to promote the attainment of the highest possible level of health by all peoples. In this article that accompanies this video, I will show, and if you're not on the page, just go to mercola.com and type in World Health Organization and it should come up. But in this article, I'm going to show you how WHO is beyond conflicted, and because of its existing funding, absolutely fails to complete its initial mandate, but even worse, serves as corporate masters and effectively is destroying the health of the world. Now, you might recall that WHO is the organization that released a statement in September of last year that they had worked with Facebook to curb vaccine misinformation and essentially usurped free speech and accountable democracy in America. And that usurping is still going on to this very day. Now, interestingly, on June 11, 2009, the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic of novel influenza virus A, which is also called H1N1 or swine flu. And they facilitated the rapid development of a vaccine, and within months, cases of disability and death from the H1N1 vaccine were reported in various parts of the world. Now, the CDC estimates that in the US from April 12, 2009 to April 10th, 2010, essentially a year, there was nearly 61 million cases of swine flu, 274,000 hospitalizations, and 12,469 deaths, which interestingly is a 0.02% infection fatality rate. So interestingly, a joint investigation by the British Medical Journal and the Bureau of Investigative Journalism uncovered some serious conflicts of interest between the WHO, who proposed heavy vaccinations, and the pharmaceutical companies that actually created them. Now, their joint investigation report explains that the WHO profited immensely from the scare tactics they used to promote the use of swine flu vaccine. Creating mass hysteria was the WHO's Emergency Advisory Committee's goal. The WHO told the world that up to 7 million people could die without the vaccines that they were pushing. So the WHO's advisory panel was absolutely filled with members who were absolutely conflicted and highly connected to the pharmaceutical companies, and they had massive vested interests in both antiviral and flu vaccines. Since over $4 billion was invested in developing these vaccines, and without a pandemic, there would be no use for them. So they used propaganda and fear and pushed these drugs on unsuspecting people and made loads of money. In the January 2000 issue of a trade journal, Pharmaceutical Technology, they disclosed that only 1/4 of WHO's funding comes from its member states, the countries that are actually form the WHO. So the remaining 75% of its income, WHO's income, comes from voluntary contributions. And guess what? The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is the largest contributor in donations, and they exceed those of any individual member state. Now, it's also interesting, and many people are not aware of this, but a large number of people are, that last year in October, the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security hosted a pandemic tabletop exercise called Event 2001 that just happened to focus on coronavirus, just happened to focus. And they partnered with the World Economic Forum, and guess who else? The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now, interestingly, in response to this current pandemic declared by the World Health Organization, they came out and made a statement, and they just wanted to clarify that the Center for Health Security and Partners did not make a prediction during their tabletop exercise. For the scenario, they moderated or they modeled a fictional coronavirus pandemic, but they explicitly stated that it was not a prediction. Imagine that. Instead, the exercise served to highlight preparedness and response challenges that would likely arise in a very severe pandemic. And they were not predicting that the SARS-CoV-2 epidemic would kill 65 million people. So isn't it interesting that they had this pandemic literally months before it was released into the world population? I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Now, Bill Gates, when he was running Microsoft, was generally perceived as one evil guy, and many people still perceive him as that, but certainly not the majority of the population, because he is smart, there's no question, and he spun off a philanthropic effort and essentially donated most of his money to his foundation. Now, his foundation, interestingly, donates his money to a trust, and the trust legally can invest in a wide variety of stocks. And guess what type of stocks he's investing in? Things like Coca-Cola, Walmart, Walgreens, a large multinational pharmaceutical drug retailer, and two of the world's largest TV companies. Additionally, approximately a quarter of the Gates Foundation Trust assets are invested in Berkshire Hathaway from Warren Buffett. And this holding company owns $17 billion shares in Coca-Cola and $29 billion in Kraft Heinz, another of the world's 10 largest food companies. And isn't it interesting that almost all the restaurants in the United States are currently closed except for the fast food restaurants? So if you hear any announcements from the World Health Organization, you have to know who their primary funder is, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And they are not out to protect yours or the world's public health. Quite to the stark contrast, their intention is not to protect yours or the public's health interests, but it's to reward their corporate investors.